We're here at the US Federal Reserve Complex here in Washington, D.C., the place that is getting ready to decide next week whether or not to raise interest rates. But ahead of that meeting, there's plenty for them to consider. What we've seen during the course of this last week in the US banking sector, in global financial markets, all of that will have a bearing on what the Federal Reserve decides during the course of next week's two-day meeting. Now, on Thursday, the US Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, was before the Senate Banking Committee testifying about what happened with the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, really trying to reassure US consumers that their money is safe and that the banking system is secure. She also reminded the US public that no taxpayer money has been used to prop up those two banks. But not everyone is convinced. We've seen Moody's, one of the top 3 credit rating agencies, downgrade their outlook for the US banking system during the course of this week. They've downgraded it from stable to negative. And then on top of that, there are reports that there are now 2 federal investigations underway to look at what happened at Silicon Valley Bank. The US Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission looking into whether there were any red flags that were perhaps either missed or simply ignored in the run-up to the collapse of the bank. Now, the Federal Reserve, when they meet next week, will be deciding whether or not to raise interest rates. Before the collapse of SVB, there was an all but 100% chance that they would raise rates, either by 0.25 percentage point or perhaps even by as much as 0.5%. But following the collapse, the thinking now is that they may decide not to raise rates at all. They've been doing so aggressively during the course of the last year, but that was essentially the undoing of SVB. So instead, the Fed governors may decide that rather than raising rates to try and tame inflation, they may decide to pause on the rate hikes and try and build back some confidence into the US economy. Harper, SABC News, Washington.